Hello. I am on the floor tonight, just because I felt like it. I was writing, and I'll get back to writing. I'm really trying to be good about just getting my word count done because I want to have a first draft of this project done by March 1st is my plan, and so I have a lot of work to do. But I'm feeling really good about it and inspired, and just trying not to take it too seriously and just keep pushing and just get something done because I never finish anything. Which is kind of why I wanted to just like quickly pop on here and record something because it's been like a week maybe since I've done one of these, and the initial like excitement of doing it has kind of worn off, you know? And I also just like had a little here's one of the cats. Wow, up close and personal. Please don't put your butt to the camera. Okay. Um but I also just had a little bout of like some mental health stuff, which makes it hard for me to like do anything. So anyway, hi buddy. Hey. Um just bumping the he's so excited that I'm sitting on the floor and accessible to him. Oh my god. Hi. That was okay, now he's headbutting the computer. Okay. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about is I was having a conversation today with my friend about just writing, and like I've been reading Wuthering Heights, and I will talk about that once the movie comes out next week and I see the movie. I already have a lot to say, and the movie's not even out yet. The movie, I mean, it's not an adaptation of Wuthering Heights in really any sense other than, I guess, just taking the characters, like the names of the character. I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna have a lot to say about it. But anyway, I've been reading Wuthering Heights, and it was slow at work, and I was reading Wuthering Heights, and I just really, it's not my favorite classic that I've ever read. It's not like my favorite book, but I will say that um you're so cute. The way that people used to write, we just don't do it anymore. And it's what I was talking about last time with the fact that reading is not a function of society, reading and writing, as it used to be. Like now everything is short form video or just like instantaneous texting or calling or whatever. Like people used to have to sit down and like write out their thoughts with letters and books and stuff. And so naturally, the way that we use language and interact with language has changed a lot, just by function of technology and the way that society works now and all of those things. But and I know I'm romanticizing the past, and I know I just love classic literature anyway, but there's just such great depth in the ideas that they're portraying. And I mean, this is something that I was talking about last time I made a video too. So I don't want to retread too much ground, but it's just really great. So even though like the story isn't super connecting with me and it's not my favorite thing I've ever read, it feels so worth my time, which my number one rule for anything is don't waste my time. Whether it's people or literature, any kind of art, is like I just like when someone knows what they're doing and like can like grab my hand and be like, we're going on this journey together. And Emily Bronte, all the Bronte sisters were geniuses and knew what they were doing. But anyway, so I was reading it, and my friend was working, and I was talking to her about the narrator of the book would just speak about what the characters are thinking and feeling. And instead of, giving us all of the dialogue in a scene, it was just talking about the back and forth of like, oh, she's noticing that his attitude has changed and he's growing more irritated at the way she's acting. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I love this so much. And my point that I was making to my friend is that I feel like literature is such a like the novel is such a fascinating medium because it's all about it's like my a lot of my favorite things have been like maximal interiority. I want to know exactly what the characters are thinking. I want to know their like the thought process and the way that they come to certain conclusions and the way they speak to each other is very interesting to me. And I feel like a lot of modern literature is people are obsessed with the idea of show don't tell. And when I was working in games, you know, that was something that people, these writers, these games writers would talk so much about, like these certain writers who were known for, you know, their philosophies on narrative, Robert McKee being very famous among those names, and that type of thing. And it's just interesting to me because I feel like TV and film and subsequently games have become such a popular mode of storytelling. And I think especially TV these days feels like the main way that people are engaging with storytelling on the day to day in the way that people probably used to read novels. Um, so that's interesting. But the screenwriting techniques of like it's a visual medium, show it, don't tell. Like don't just have your characters tell you something. Give us, you know, a shorthand, a visual shorthand, or just be really, really efficient with your words and your dialogue because, you know, in scope, usually a film, or especially these days with like the shorter seasons of television, you have to be a lot more economical depending on like what your scope is, you know, just with the way that you know, give out information and have readers or viewers, or really in this case viewers, because I'm talking about like film and TV, the way you get them on board with your story and your characters and understanding the world that you're creating, you have to be able to do that very efficiently. And the novel, and I love long form storytelling so much, like the novel, because you can really take your time and like sit with characters and um, just really flesh things out. But the other thing about the novel, again, is that it puts you in the head of a character or multiple characters or whatever in a way that other media can't quite do in the same way, which is why I love like every specific medium has its own strengths. And my two favorites are literature and games, uh, for whatever reasons. And I will forever try and unravel what those reasons are. But anyway, so thinking of this idea of show don't tell, um, and it sort of being the end all be all of how uh, we're supposed to tell stories, which I have a whole other thing with the like Save the Cat and Robert McKee's story and these books that basically tell you like how to write and are formulaic. Okay, I don't want to say that because they're a great resource and touchstone for people who have never thought about or engaged with the craft of storytelling before. And they have a very useful place in that rhetoric. Whatever the book is about the hero's journey is a really good one too, because that's coming from a place of like narrative theory. Like we're studying the structures, the traditional structures of storytelling and the way that we have told stories um almost forever. Sorry, my cat clicked something on my keyboard. You're so cute. He's just laying here getting pets from me. Uh but anyway, so you know, these books and these texts of like, yeah, this is the structure, this is whatever, and then again something like a Save the Cat or story are going to be like, and this is how you write a good story. And again, those tools can be very useful to kind of get your foot in the door. But the thing about art is that it's not something you can lock down and it's not a science. And I'm not necessarily saying that those texts present story as like a science, but I feel like, again, this is just my own personal anecdotal experience, a lot of people who don't have as much natural acuity for storytelling take those things as the Bible. And they take those works as this is how you're supposed to do it. And they don't want to stray from those things. And the thing about art is that it is impossible to pin down and it's an ever evolving beast. And the people who really push things forward and make the art world an exciting, beautiful place. It's what I was talking about with Cat's Eye and Jenny, just with the way that I love the way that those groups or individuals are pushing forward the pop world of pop music and pop culture. And again, that's within the K-pop realm and within my own personal tastes and all of those other factors. But again, I'm just trying to connect all these dots of like the things that interest me, because I feel like it's like this web of all these interconnected things. Anyway, so the thing that really pushes culture and art forward are people who are willing to take these rules that we've laid out of this is the act structure that you need to write, and this is the rising action and the falling action, and this beat goes here and this beat goes here. The people who are willing to take that and kind of throw it out the window and try completely new things and interesting things, or again take those structures that we already have and do something completely new with them or completely interesting. Or I think my other thing is just people, really I think great artists are people who feel like they have something to say, that they need to say. And it's hard to try and reverse engineer story, because when you're coming from a place of, okay, I want to write a really good story, what's it going to be about? I don't really know what, and you're trying to come at it from this formulaic way. I don't always think that makes for good storytelling. My cat is being so cute. I'm just petting him right now. Oh, he's adorable. Sorry, he's distracting me in like a really fun way. Anyway, so I guess the larger point I was trying to make is that I love books so much and I love literature because, especially when you go back and read the classics, these modern conventions of storytelling, this like obsession with show don't tell, which I should have explained that up top. I didn't even talk about that. If you don't know, which I'm going to assume that people don't know because I don't want to, leave anybody out. Show don't tell is very like, let's see if I can even define it right now on the spot. Oh, my foot's falling asleep. There's so much happening in this moment. Okay. It's like, especially again with screenwriting and stuff, it's like, don't just info dump. Don't just have a character tell us everything about, like, if you're trying to establish a relationship between two characters, maybe have an argument between them where we can get keyed into through very subtle clues, the history, that the personal history that they have together, and some of the things that they've been through, or there's tension there, and it's kind of hearkening to this greater history that they have, rather than saying, yeah, Sarah cheated on Johnny and now they're fighting and that's what's happening. That's a terrible example, but essentially it's trying to pull back as much explanation, I think, as possible, especially over explanation, because that's the other thing is I think people who, again, maybe don't have as much what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say people who don't have as much natural acuity for storytelling, which isn't always true, because I think sometimes too it just comes down to people continuing to improve their craft, and not everything has to be perfect. Like, I think the art for the sake of creating art is also like a really valuable thing. So again, because okay, I'm stepping out of this thing I'm trying to explain to a larger idea for a second. Bear with me. I know I'm jumping around a lot. But I think too, like under capitalism, this idea of like optimization is such a big thing, because I think we exist in a system that is so difficult and hard to exist in and live in, like make a living in, that people have become obsessed with this idea of like figuring out how a system works and optimizing it for their own benefit. You see this in the video game industry all the time, the way with people min-max games, and you can look up what that is if you want to know more about it. You see it with how people interact with the stock market. and the whole sort of side hustle culture and all of that. So when you lay that philosophy of like optimization above all else over, first of all, humanity, like that's not how people exist. We are not perfect. We are not machines. Uh, and this sort of like sterilization of the human experience of emotion and of flaws and all of those things, um, really icks me out and it makes me sad. And I think it's also something that's really driving the tech industry right now too. But when you lay that over art as well, and say like, again, treating it like a science, like we have to hit this beat and this beat and this beat perfectly in just the right way. um Again, it's a sterilization, and I think a stripping away of a lot of the things that make art really beautiful. And a lot of this too is I'm trying to get outside of my sort of traditional modes of storytelling and read a lot more like new, weird, off the wall types of books and poetry and all of those things. So anyway, coming back to the show don't tell thing, I'm sure I was making another point and I don't remember what it was now, but I'm gonna try and jump back in where I can because I'm all over the place tonight. But anyway, so when it comes to, there's the kitty moving the camera again. This idea of show don't tell with classic literature, I'm like, oh my god, all the author is doing is telling me. I'm not in the scene. I'm not, hearing the conversation of these characters speak to each other. It's just telling. And it's great because you could give me the moment to moment dialogue and we'll get the back and forth of the characters and we'll see how their attitudes are changing and all of those things. But we've also experienced that a lot in this story anyway. Wuthering Heights has a ton of great scenes of characters giving each other, back and forth and all that. But to jump into the subtext, like you're speaking to me, the subtext of what their conversation is fascinating. And no other media can really do that the way the books can, and that's something that I think is really cool. And gets to just like the heart of how these people are thinking and feeling, these characters in this scene. I just think it's really cool. So yeah, I don't know. But then on the flip side, because everything is so contradictory all the time, because I was just talking to somebody else about the book Red Rising, which I tried to read and I bounced off of really hard. And I don't DNF books ever. And I DNF'd Red Rising, which it was also having to do with some circumstances as to why I read it and when, and it was a whole thing. But one of the thing that made me bounce off of it the hardest was the writing style. And I felt like the thing that frustrated me about that book is that it was so action oriented, and yet I felt like it was all told to me. And I felt like there were no instances where I was like jumping into a scene and experiencing it with the characters. I mean, that did happen, but not as often as I wanted. And I think the other thing too is that everybody compared it to the Hunger Games, and the Hunger Games is one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. So that's already going to be a losing game for me anyway. So I don't know, like that's an instance where I feel like the story was told to me a lot more rather than shown, and I hated it. So I don't know, I'll have to go back and revisit those books at some point. But yeah, all these rules that we put in place for ourselves are with story are fascinating because the conventions change all the time, and the ways that we tell stories change all the time with new technology, new media, like games coming up, over the last 40 years and introducing a whole new mode of telling stories. It's just really interesting to me. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to get on here for consistency's sake. And I feel like maybe I said some things that made sense within all of that chaos. Cool. All right. Well, time to get back to writing. Stay safe, stay sane, and have a good one.